Hello, this is the Electrifying podcast. I am Ginny.
And I'm Mike.
And welcome to our weekly roundup of what we've been driving, what we'd like to drive, what's caught our eye in the news, and all the things that have been keeping us entertained, chatting, and possibly arguing about as well, Mike, hey?
It's always a bit of healthy disagreement, Ginny. That makes it all worthwhile.
There is. What would you expect from a bunch of creative people with different opinions? There's loads of that. So there's only two of us this week. It's only the second week, and we're already one man and one woman down.
Yeah.
Did you tell them they could take holidays, Mike?
They obviously enjoyed it so much they tried to do anything they could to avoid being on it for a second week. But we've got to keep our end up, haven't we? And carry on.
We do. We should say happy holidays to Tom and to Nicola, and also to our Nikki Shields. Welcome to a new arrival. Nikki will be joining us on the podcast, but she is currently at home with her third baby, a lovely, lovely baby girl. So congratulations to Nikki. We can't wait to have you back. But in the meantime, Mike, what new arrivals? See what I did there?
Yeah.
What new arrivals have there been in the car world? Was that really bad?
It was pretty bad. Well, I mean, the thing is, I've been driving a desk all week, partly because Tom's been off having a nice holiday and a well-earned break. So I've been driving the kind of driving the website, which is nowhere near as much fun as actually driving cars, as you know. But I mean, you've had the best week because you've done some serious miles because you've been doing bits and pieces in Wales, but you also, I was quite envious of this, being a smart owner, you got to drive the #1. So apart from the awful name, what was it like?
It's quite hard to move on from the name. I think this possibly might lead us into a discussion of what the worst names for cars have ever been. And if you have anything worse than the smart #1, do let us know in the comments below, because it's stretched our imagination, hasn't it, and our memory, going back for some bad ones. But other than the name, I haven't driven this. Wookie went off and drove it overseas in a left-hand drive version. Do you know some cars you kind of don't pay that much attention to when they're sort of, on their way? And I was a bit kind of, ambivalent about it, really. I wasn't kind of as excited as you are as a smart owner. And I was really surprised at how much I liked it. I rang you up from that sort of dodgy car park we were in trying to film somewhere around the southeast of England. And I was like, I really like it. And it was one of those cars that was a really pleasant surprise. I think it is very, very good. It feels very nicely put together. It rides really well, feels nice and peppy. It had a really lovely, comfortable ride. And this has been one of our disagreements this week, Mike, I think, about, ride of cars, and more on that probably later. But no, overall, I thought it was a really impressive package. Only had a couple of hours in it. I'm looking forward to spending a bit more time in it. And we've got one coming in, I think, in September that we will spend a bit of time in. But I was pleasantly impressed.
Because it's an interesting proposition, isn't it? Because it's for those who don't know, it's a joint venture between Mercedes, who owns Smart, and Geely, the enormous Chinese electric car conglomerate. So they let Geely do the bits that you don't see, the bits they're really good at, which is the battery pack and the driving, all that kind of bits. And Mercedes has been left in charge of the styling, haven't they? So that's it's a joint venture that's actually the right way around for once, because generally it can be the other way around. So yeah, I mean, from what you said, it sounds like it drives really well. Looks good. Ticks all the boxes, yeah?
I'm going to pick you up on that. Looks good. So I think it looks really nice side on, actually. I think
and it's enormous, isn't it? When I'm just doing the thumbnail for the video, and you're standing in front of it, and it almost like it's a really bad Photoshop. It always looks like someone's got their dimensions wrong here, because in the pictures it looks like a sort of slightly fat Super Mini, but in reality, it's a lot bigger, isn't it?
Yeah, I think from memory, it's actually slightly larger than the Kia Soul, which is I always sort of benchmark that as a really good size, boxy, big family car. I think certain angles it looks much better than others. One thing about it that I'm very relieved about is it's got a slightly strange infotainment system. It has a Fox. It is. It's like,
is it as bad as it sounds?
When you give kids the Fox. It is really. It's very badly judged. So everyone, imagine like those iPads or those tablet things that you give to 4-year-olds when they're not real ones, and they've got, like my first tablet and some friendly animals, and it's all kind of like funny sort of pastel colors, and there's a world that spins around, and the virtual assistant is a fox, and the fox pops up on the screen, and it does things like go to sleep and bounces a ball on its nose and things. Look, I'm sure the kids would like it, but no. So I'm very relieved that actually in the UK we are getting CarPlay as standard across all models, so that the Fox doesn't have to come out to play too often.
I mean, from my point of view, if you've got to go to the level of having to add a virtual assistant that then shows you where the mirror adjustment is
Yeah,
or something like that, and you kind of failed anyway. That's a sticking plaster, isn't it? It should be as intuitive as it needs to be without having to
yeah,
ask. Maybe I've got it wrong. Maybe people. I don't have an Alexa, or I don't use Siri much. I'm not in the habit of walking into a room and asking it to turn the lights on or off or anything. But I know there's a generation of people who do, and who talk to their cars. And maybe I'm just
yeah.
old. I don't. But do you? I mean, I don't feel particularly comfortable asking a car to wind the windows down or put Radio 5 on or something like that. I just try and do it myself.
You're asking the wrong person, Mike, because I'm quite old as well.
Yeah.
Like,
We
I
need.
think the thing with the fox was curious though, because I tried to ask it a few different things, and really all I think I could get it to do was to navigate me to places. So it won't kind of answer questions, and I tried to have a chat with it, and Fox wasn't up for chatting with me,
They're all
which is a
awful.
bit disheartening, really.
I don't think I've come across any one of those ones where with voice control that's worked especially well. The one in my Ionic is hopeless. Doesn't really sound. You ask it to
Yeah,
turn the heated seats on. It knows what you're saying, but it needs a specific phrase. It needs. I think the Koreans
yeah.
refer it to as the seat heating system. And unless you use those three words, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't know. It doesn't have any kind of space either side. I think heated seats. That's what people call them. Yeah. So by the time you've asked it 3 times, you might as well just press the button and do it. So yeah, I'm not
Maybe they
not
need
one
to
over.
start. Maybe they need to start sending them with a kind of with a guide to the terms, to the popular terms that you need to going to ask.
Yeah, it's game over at that
Anyway,
point,
let's
isn't it?
move on from
Anyway,
that. What
sorry.
else have I
Yeah.
been driving? So what have you driven anything this week other than your own cars, obviously? But have you literally been chained to the desk?
Well, I'm not literally been changed to a desk. I don't think that's legal, but I've been using. I've driven the i3 a bit this week, and that's sort of my i3. I've got a BMW, 4-year-old BMW i3, which that's about the longest I really tend to keep cars for is 4 years. So I'm slightly getting itchy feet on it, as you know. And I've been looking for alternatives and things that sort of pop up. You think, oh yeah, I quite like one of those. But every time I think about selling the i3, all the kind of slightly irritating things that I have with it seem to stop. And when I'm thinking about selling it, I'll start to look on Auto Trader, and all the squeaks. It's got a slightly noisy steering rack at the moment. I'm not entirely sure why, but as soon as I think about buying something else and trading it in, it all stops. It also becomes something really well behaved. It really drives nicely. And as soon as I kind of made my mind up and thought, yeah, you know what? No, I'll stick with the i3. I do love it. It's a great car. They all come back. It starts squeaking again. It starts rattling again. So you've got a dog as well, haven't you? And I've got a dog, and when they're kind of walking around the floor, it look like they're dying. So I think I better get them to the vet. Sunday's 200 quid, doesn't matter. The dog's really important. As soon as you get to the vet, they're
Always.
completely fine. It's the same with cars, I'm sure. As soon as they know you're thinking about trading it and moving on, they really buck their ideas up. So I've only
So
really
what?
been
So what?
driving
So
the
what?
i3 this week.
So where do we stand on the i3 at the minute? Is it staying or is it going?
Oh, I've just had a tax bill, so it's staying. I can't afford anything at the moment. So yeah, it's
I like it. I'm glad. I'm glad it's saying. Even I'm fond of your i3.
yeah. And
Um,
I mentioned it to other people, and they say, "No, you can't sell that. You can't sell that." But they're not the ones paying the bills for it. So it's yeah, I have to kind of live through them. But yeah, it's staying for now.
Good, good. I think what else have I been driving this week?
Hmm.
The risk of talking about the ENIAC every week, I have driven the ENIAC again this week because I've been doing a bit of filming this week. And I've been back into Wales, which is quite a trek.
Hmm.
In fact, I have literally just walked in the door from Wales, 4.5 hours drive in the car. And I didn't stop to charge actually on that one because I need to get back for our podcast.
Showing off,
So
showing
yeah,
off. You can drive all that way without having to charge up.
I,
It
I
won't
know,
happen.
I
It can't
know.
be done, Ginny. You've read you've had
Oh,
our replies to our Twitter. You can't be done.
it's impossible to drive 4.5 hours in an electric car. Well, I shouldn't have driven that length, but I did. On the way down, though, I did stop just sort of west of Swansea. I didn't need charge, but I did need a hot chocolate because I was at that time of the day where I needed something sweet. So I just popped it on charge just to do a quick top up while I nipped in. And the grid serve charges were there. They were 50 kilowatts, but they were working fine. But what also was there was, again, this whole bank of charges that were going in. I've taken a video actually, which I'll put over on my Twitter. And it's just really interesting to see there was that big announcement from GridServe that, of course, we've covered over at electrifying.com about a huge investment that they're putting in over the next couple of years into charging infrastructure. And look, it's not perfect everywhere around the country, far from it, but I've definitely seen more and more of it coming at motorway service areas, which I think is really important because I think it's you that was saying earlier, it's where we need to see visibility of it and we just need more of them. So there was a huge bank of them there. And I think it's really good to see from someone like GridServe that it's not just a big figure, that they're not just announcing this, they are actually putting charges in because, you know, all those announcements are easy to make because we know the hard bit is getting charges into the ground, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, actually bolting them in is the easy bit, and I think that they face a lot of challenges with service areas because a lot of them were built in the 60s and 70s. Have when a services was just 6 loos and somewhere you could get a cup of tea. Now they've got they've got takeaways, they've got restaurants and everything, so they're already up to capacity from what they were originally
Yeah.
designed to do. And if you're trying to put in a bank of 350 kilowatt chargers, then the infrastructure can't cope with it because service areas by their nature are in the middle of nowhere, aren't they? They're halfway up the M6. They're always in places where it's really difficult. So, but it's like I was saying, it's the perception of it, isn't it? If I've got a neighbour who drives a petrol or diesel car, they go to a motorway services, they might be thinking about switching to electric, but they'll see those two chargers that are invariably there. They'll see maybe none not working. They'll see people queuing. And they'll be quite right in saying, well, I don't think we're ready to go electric now because I don't want to do that. But what they probably don't know is that, that A, there's stuff coming, as we know, and B, that there's a new world of charging, isn't there? You've got that M40, the Banbury charge hub that's there with InstaVolt. There's how many 30 chargers there now? And, but if you don't drive a petrol or a diesel car, you would never drive past that. So you would never know that's there. So it's going to be a combination of places like that and these new hubs. And if they are rolling out 12, 20 chargers at motorway services, then it's moving in the right direction, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, absolutely. And talking of charging, something else that has been really easy, which again is something I'm noticing more and more of. So I've been away and I've stayed over at a hotel and it had 3 chargers there, which is utterly brilliant, for electric car drivers. They were full all the time, and it was really sweet because there's a few of us staying there, and we were all like, "Oh, I'm full now. My battery's full.
Nice.
Well, you can have it tomorrow," and that's something that. So the program that I work on, it's a BBC program I've made for years, and it involves us travelling all over the place around the countryside, looking at houses randomly. But I've not really been able to do that in an electric car. On some journeys, if there were shorter ones, I've done it comfortably, but I was driving full time a Peugeot E208, and it just didn't have the range that I needed for those kind of journeys. So I'm doing much more of that now. I started last year. I've not gone in a hybrid now for probably 2 years, and actually this time for the first time ever, the crew and actually on camera we're using an electric car as well. So I've been driving a Polestar 2, which I hadn't driven for ages. And what really impressed me with it was actually how many of us we could squeeze into it. Because when you're with a film crew, you have a lot of rubbish. You really do. It's not like Manos, our head of production, who's very lean and light and, gets the job done. So we've got a sound recordist with big boom microphones, and we've got 4 people traveling in the car, and we have 2 cameras, and we've got all the bags and the kit. Gosh, it's cavernous. It literally does. We all sort of piled into it. And I was talking to the team and just saying, because they'd had no experience with electric cars. And I thought I might get a few moans because this is the first series that they've been running one as the main car. We've had hybrids for a long time, but not a fully electric as the main car. And they've really enjoyed it and they've had
That's
no
good.
challenges. And actually, they've been able to always find hotels with charging. So that was a bit of a, I don't know, just a bit of like nice good news for me that actually it is getting better out there, although we do have a way to go.
Yeah, Tom sent me a very interesting picture because Tom just when he's on holiday just sends me random photos of well, and he sent me this one that you can't really see, but basically sort of it shows the charging screen that was from his car, and it says the key
Yeah.
figures there. It says 21.05 kilowatts. So he's on an AC post. So, but he's in another. He's got our new long-term Nissan Area, which is
Yeah.
one of the few cars that can charge on AC up to 22 kilowatts. So
Yeah.
it's the most Anoraki picture he could have sent. But he said this makes me happy is the fact that he was getting 22 kilowatts on an AC charger. So that's the level of kind of anorakness that goes on in the electrifying team, isn't it? Really
There is.
didn't show me a picture of his hotel or where he was staying or any of his, his kids or anything like that. Or it was just literally one picture of a charging screen. So, and that's made his. I think it's made his week basically. So,
I think perhaps we do all need to get out a little bit more. So talking about the week ahead, what we got coming up? So we've got the Citroen. What video's just gone live? Is it Citroen? You're a bit more.
The Citroen EC4X, which is an interesting proposition. It's a booted version of the EC4. It's exactly the same price, so there's no kind of you've got a decision thing. Well, that's cheaper, so we'll choose that. So it'd be interesting to see whether the hatch obsessed British market will go for that or not. But I quite like the look of the saloon. I actually think it looks all right. I think it suits that shape. But I think people always worry that they're not going to get a fridge freezer in the back of it, so we'll always um, go for the hatch version. But an interesting car. But and Nicola's reviewed it, and that's just gone live on the site now. And we've got your smart hashtag. What do we really got to call it that forever? And you've got a
No.
smart one. You've got your smart video. I mean, those will be a couple of years before they build anything else, isn't it? So we can call it the smart video.
Should
That
we
goes
just call
out
it the
this weekend.
hashtag instead?
No, it's even worse. No, you've got your smart video going out.
Is it
Sunday?
okay?
Sunday is the plan, I think. So yeah, that's the first part of the next couple of videos that's going out.
First part of the week covered, and then we've got we're getting a couple of interesting cars in next week. We've got the VW ID3 coming in, haven't we?
Yep.
To spend a bit more time in that, and we also got the BYD. And I've got a confession to make. I'm probably the only one on the team who hasn't driven a BYD yet, so I'm quite looking forward to that.
I think you'd have a treat in store if you were buying one, especially if you were looking at something else. Could you say, "My goodness, that's $6,000 less than anyone else is asking for an electric car." So on the sums, it works brilliantly. I'm fascinated to see what you make of it because dynamically, I think they're okay, and I mean, I think for most people, okay is good. I've driven the Atto 3. I've driven that in the UK, and I drove the Dolphin in Barcelona when it was very early drivers around a circuit, which gives you absolutely no idea what a car's like. So I'd be interesting to see what you think of it, actually, because I think it's an interesting proposition. I don't think anyone can get close to the Chinese manufacturers for production costs, and BYD's, as we've discussed before, it's a fascinating company. This is what they call a vertical supply chain, so much as Volkswagen have to buy their batteries in for someone else, have to buy the motors in from someone else, and that's what makes the car expensive because there's a profit margin in every step of that. BYD builds everything like Tesla to an extent, but BYD go even further than that. They own the lithium mines, that kind of thing. They own the entire production line. So there's
Supply
only one
chain,
then supply chain rather. Yeah. So they not everybody's taking a chunk of profit out of it in every stage of it. So that's how they can do stuff for the price they can. So I'd be interested to see if anyone else can manage to beat that. But well, I mean, this time next week we'll do another podcast and you'll give us your verdict.
We can chat about it. Yeah, I think the thing that I found really quite interesting is that I was looking through some of the sales figures just ahead of driving them both on Monday, and BYD sells double the amount of battery electric cars around the world that VW does.
Yeah.
And I found that quite astonishing for a company that it was only started, 20 odd years ago, and started off really as a battery manufacturer.
Yeah, it's
So
big in
I mean, I
phones.
know,
Yeah,
yeah, they've done batteries for Nokia phones. I think was it
yeah, that's
wasn't
how
it
they.
as well? I think.
Yeah, that's how they start. I mean, they
Yeah.
sold
Yep.
911,000 electric cars last year. I mean, that Tesla did 1.3 million, so they're still out in front in terms of pure battery electric. But if you look at the way the sales are ramping up, and the way Teslas are
Mm.
slightly kind of tailing off, not tailing off, but sort of leveling out, within a year, who knows? They probably will, and they're not really in Europe in the volume that they want to be yet. So they could be bigger than Tesla within this time next year.
Right, Mike. So what else has been going on this week? What else has caught your eye? Any news stories?
Yeah, while we're talking about Chinese electric cars that go a long way on not much money, MG have added a new extended range car
Yeah.
model to the MG4 range. So you got a huge choice now. You got standard range, long range. You got that bonkers X Power thing that's quicker than a Lamborghini, which Nicola drove and did a video on the other week. And you now got the extended range, which is I think 300 and something, 320 odd miles of WLTP range. So that's a good 280, 290 all round range. I think that's fantastic value for money now. And everybody I've spoken to seems to be happy with an MG4. I've not driven with one that much. I know you have a little bit, but it seems to be they're doing so well, and they're building cars that are
Mhm.
going to be available within 12 weeks, back to kind of normal lead times and everything. So yeah, I mean that's been a real success story, hasn't it?
It has, yeah, absolutely. I know. I think and it's interesting because another Chinese brand, and
Mm.
I just do wonder what is going to happen to some of these big names that have been around for so long. Are they going to be able to survive this onslaught? I think it's going to be a really interesting time ahead. But I think I was catching up on the news, and a story that you put up a couple of days ago about used car prices. So used electric car sales. I thought that was really interesting, and just this figure here, there's been an 82% increase in the numbers of pure electric cars being sold. And that's actually driving the uplift that we're seeing with used cars and used car pricing. All those people sort of saying, oh, the electric cars, I'll never catch on. The prices did drop for a while there, but it was an alignment, wasn't it?
It was an alignment because they were crazy high, weren't they,
Yeah.
during the pandemic, and so were normal internal combustion engine car. They were also crazy high because you couldn't buy a new car because everything had stopped. So it's just that curve has taken longer to settle down with electric
Mm-hmm.
cars. And electric cars are only, I think, 30,000 electric cars, so only 1 under 2% of the market.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it, most used cars are 3 to 4 years old, and if you think what the new electric cars were as a percentage of the new car market, I'm tying myself up in knots here. It is going to have that lag. It's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
mirror image of it was 3 or 4 years ago. And from our own used car marketplace, Ben, who's the captain of figures, he says that for the first time the values have started. The last 2 months, values have started to go up again, and not by much. Not shooting up, but they've leveled
Yeah.
off. They hit a point now. They're sort of going back up again. And also the number of cars for sale has dropped, which means that more are getting sold. There's less sitting around in dealers' forecourts now. And I think if that gives dealers the confidence to buy in used electric stock, then that's got to be a good thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And yeah, and if anybody is looking for a used electric car, we've got lots of great reviews and videos here on YouTube and also over at electrifying.com. And as Mike said, we do also have a used electric car marketplace. So it purely focuses on electric. So it's got all the stats and all the things that you need to know about electric, because you have different questions, don't you, when you buy an electric car to if you're buying a petrol or diesel. And you can't always find everything you want to on regular marketplaces. So hopefully we've solved that one for you. So that's the serious news stories of the week. What about
Yeah.
those ones that are slightly dubious, Mike? Anything that's caught your eye this week?
Well,
If not, I've got one.
yeah, I mean, all I've got is, when I sit there and thumb through my Apple News in the morning, is more kind of nonsense from our friends in the mainstream press who, I think the last one I saw was in a Cornish beach. There was an electric car that was stranded that everybody was worried was going to explode when it got submerged with water. It was a Toyota Prius. So it wasn't even an electric car, but it was in sort of a Cornish local newspaper. But then ITV picked it up and ran it as not fact checked anything. It was just thinking, well, if they get that sort of stuff wrong, what else are they getting wrong? I mean, that's the stuff we know about. So it is a bit of a worry, isn't it, that on the bigger picture sometimes that yeah, it's so inaccurate. But anyway, I'm sure
Yeah.
that's a boring rubbish story. What have you found?
Well, it's not actually. It's an interesting, debatable story. I think that is something I know we've talked about as a team. So it's an Airbnb host who
Right.
has been left shocked after electric car drivers steal her electricity. So this is obviously electric car driver is going to stay with her, and she doesn't have a charger fitted, and they've used a 3-pin
Right.
to charge. So they've put a lead through a window inside, and she's seen a big spike in her electricity bills, and she reckons that in recent years it's added around £600 that she can't account for to her electricity bills. Now, I remember when, we were first sort of starting out, this is probably 3 years ago, when electricity was some really obviously much, much lower cost than it is now. And it wasn't a lot of money to charge your electric car. But even then, I remember as a team us having discussions about what's the right thing to do when you go to somebody's house.
Yeah.
So if you go to somebody's house and you charge your car, should you pay for it? And we were like, oh, I don't, it depends how well you know them. It's a fiver. It's not a four or £5 anymore, is it? I mean,
No.
it is, potentially less expensive if you're using a lower tariff, you're charging overnight. But actually, it's this whole thing about free charging. Free charging is starting to disappear. And whilst an Airbnb owner might not have noticed, half a dozen charges at £3 or £4, half a dozen charges at £30 or £40, that's definitely going to pop up on your bill, isn't it?
It is, and
So my
it's a
question
different.
to you is,
Yeah.
Mike, what do you do when you go for dinner and you charge your car at somebody's house? Do you take a bottle of wine or do you pay for the charging?
Well, I mean, would it be that I had friends that would invite me around for dinner? But no, it is an awkward one, isn't it? Because you don't want to sort of be going,
Yeah,
thinking, well, that was about £3.80 and start getting coins out of your pocket to, because it's a good way to ruin a friendship. But equally, you don't want to take the mick. You don't want to have tenner's worth of
yeah,
electric. It's just like, as you say, it's like taking two cheap bottles of wine out of their fridge and walking out with it. But yeah,
it
and it
is.
is difficult with the B&B stuff because it is hard. Not everybody knows. They don't always know how much power you've used. And I don't know about you. I mean, I always try and find somewhere that has got, charging or a plug, or they say
Yeah,
they're EV friendly or anything. But yeah, as you say, a few years ago it was a couple of quid, and no one really batted an eye. It's like running a washing machine again for a couple of times, but it does make a huge difference. But yeah, how you balance it with mates and things, it is tricky because you don't want to be sitting there transferring money. I think a bottle of wine would cover it, wouldn't it? Surely. The kind of wine
or
you
do you just
drink
not
probably
tell
covers it. The kind of stuff I buy from Asda probably, it's not enough. We need
You'd
a
have to
few of
bring
those.
a
Yeah,
case, Mike, case of wine, um, or you get one of those chargers, those smart chargers, where it's the Evios one, isn't it? That we've been running at the barn where we film, where you have a little pin code, and you can have different
yeah,
users. So that I think is a really smart idea for people. If say you're running a car for, I don't know, for work, and you need to separate out your usage for personal from work, or indeed you do have lots of friends coming to stay who are going to want to charge. You can put a different number in, and you can have
yeah,
that separated off, so you can see. So you literally could say, well, that was £11.75, Mike. That bottle of wine's only £6. Sorry, so that's
yeah.
not good enough.
It's another world, isn't it? It really is, But it's something we're going to have to get to grips with, and we'll look back and we'll probably laugh at this because there'll be systems, there'll probably be apps and all kinds of sort of nonsense to be able to kind of do it without feeling like you're paying your friends just to use their electricity. But there we go.
Well, I think we might fast be approaching our half hour of our podcast with no name. Um,
Yeah,
and while the others aren't here, should we just give it a name anyway? What
yeah,
do you think?
yeah. Given that I'm designing the thumbnail for it, I've probably got final say anyway. But yeah, what have we had any suggestions from last week?
We had some good ones actually in the comments from the podcast last week, and thanks to everybody who watched and commented and gave us loads of support. So yeah, I know it was a little shambolic, and I'm sure there will be shambolic on occasions, but I think you all seem to enjoy the chat. So we had a charging hour. I'm not sure we could stretch to an hour. That was from Urban Strenken. That's the username.
That'd be a
Do you
hard
reckon we could
watch.
stretch? I couldn't do an hour. Could you?
No, it'd be a
Would you
hard
want an
watch.
hour?
No, I wouldn't. I'm bored myself after half an hour. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
okay.
Electrocast. Roger
Okay.
Matthew Mann suggested that.
That's nice. I think it may already exist somewhere, but yeah, that's a nice one though. If it's
It is a
good,
nice.
it's generally been it's generally been used. But yeah, anyway, that's a nice one. Yeah, good one. Thank you for that.
So,
Yeah, that's good.
somebody just put, "You will need a better name,"
Yeah.
which we know we will.
Okay.
I'm assuming that's the podcast with no name.
Yeah.
And
No.
then somebody else said the name of the podcast should be exactly what you have: the podcast with no name.
Maybe that's a good one.
I like this one actually. Say what?
Oh, as in WATT. Yeah. Okay, that's
Yeah,
nice. Yeah, that's
yeah.
good.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
has that gone though? Has that gone? The
I'm sure you can.
Electrifying Weekly Recharge. We kind of talked about that, but there's quite a few recharge podcasts, aren't there?
There are one or two. Yep. Yep.
And then quite a few people saying that we should go for the kilowatt hour. But as we've already agreed, I really don't think they want an hour of us rabbiting on, do they?
No, I'll be thrown off YouTube if we had an hour of this rubbish. Yeah. So let's stick with half an hour.
So while we're here and it's just the two of us, should we vote? Who votes for the electrifying kilowatt half hour?
Well, there you go. It's
I vote for
unanimous.
it.
It's a unanimous decision.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Let's do it. So we have a podcast with a name, and we will be back next week with the electrifying kilowatt half hour. We'll have more of the team with us then. So please, if you aren't subscribed, please do. And as always, let us know what you think in the comments below. Let us know about anything you think we should be talking about. But with that, I'm going to say have a happy weekend, happy Friday, and goodbye.
Bye.